Happy holidays, everyone. We're back for our last deep dive of the year.
Yeah.
You know, before we all take a break for the holidays.
Yeah.
So we wanted to leave you with something special. A paper that really,
Yeah. A real gem.
that really stuck with us.
This year.
Yeah. So this one is all about digital platform grafting.
Absolutely.
And it's a concept that really makes you rethink how innovation works.
Yeah, it kind of flipped the script.
Flips the script, yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay, imagine you're Santa Claus.
Okay.
Talk about a traditional business wrapping. You got your elves, your workshop, the whole North Pole operation running for centuries. But all of a sudden, you've got kids ordering everything online through Amazon.
That's a great analogy. That's exactly the kind of challenge this paper tackles.
So who are these brilliant minds?
Well, it's by Joachim Björkdahl,
Okay.
Marcus Holgersson, and a giant in the strategy world, David Teece.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they argue that instead of trying to replace existing systems, companies need to think about how to integrate, like grafting a new branch onto an established tree.
I love that analogy, especially since we're all about trees and decorations this time of year.
Right.
So the paper uses healthcare as its main example, right?
Exactly. Healthcare is perfect because it's so complex. You can't just launch an app and expect to disrupt the whole system. I mean, there are regulations, existing networks of doctors, hospitals, and the need for both physical and digital care.
So unlike platforms like Uber or Airbnb, which created entirely new ecosystems,
Right.
healthcare platforms have to find a way to work within what's already there.
Precisely. And that's where platform grafting comes in. The authors break this concept down into three key parts: asset integration, task integration, and actor integration.
Okay.
All within this framework of what they call dynamic capabilities.
Okay, let's unpack those a little bit. Dynamic capabilities. That sounds a bit intense.
It's actually a really elegant idea. Think of it as a company's ability to sense opportunities, seize them through smart design, partnerships, and then continuously transform both the platform and the ecosystem. It's about being agile and adaptive, not rigid.
So how do these dynamic capabilities actually play out in the real world, specifically with asset integration?
Well, digital healthcare platforms often need to use assets they don't control, like hospitals or specialist clinics. The paper highlights Cry, a European platform. As a fascinating case study, they actually went out and acquired physical healthcare centers to complement their digital services.
So they're not just a digital platform anymore. They're like this hybrid,
Right.
blending the physical and digital.
Yeah.
That's a big move.
It is. It shows how grafting isn't just about software. It's about strategically integrating tangible assets to bridge the gap between the digital and physical world.
That makes a lot of sense, especially in healthcare.
Yeah.
What about partnering with existing players? Is that part of asset integration too?
Absolutely. The paper points to the rise of partnerships between digital platforms and pharmacies. It's a win-win. Platforms can offer services like prescription delivery, while pharmacies increase their reach and stay relevant in the digital age.
That's a great example of how grafting can actually benefit everyone involved, not just the new platform.
It's a very collaborative approach to innovation, and the paper argues that this kind of integration can lead to a much smoother patient experience, blurring the lines between digital and physical care.
So far, this is all making a lot of sense, but how does the actual work get divided? That's where task integration comes in, right?
Exactly. Task integration is about figuring out which parts of the healthcare process can be moved online and which ones need to stay in the physical world. And there are different approaches. Some platforms like Dr.SE and Dr.24 essentially try to mirror the traditional workflow digitally.
So they might have an online nurse triage system that mimics what happens in a physical clinic.
Precisely, it's about making existing processes more efficient and accessible. But other platforms, like Cry in its early days, took a bolder approach. They decided to leverage the unique advantages of digital and bypass the initial nurse screening, allowing patients to connect directly with doctors.
Wow, that's a pretty radical departure from the traditional model. What were the implications of that?
Well, it sparked a debate about whether it compromises quality of care, but it also highlights the potential for platforms to truly reimagine healthcare delivery. It's a great example of those dynamic capabilities at work, sensing a new possibility and seizing it.
And the paper highlights how these platforms are constantly evolving their task networks, right? They're not just static entities.
Absolutely. They're constantly adapting and expanding. A great example is the growing use of AI to automate tasks like Platform 24's automated triage system. It's like having a super efficient digital nurse available 24/7.
That's incredible. And it frees up human healthcare professionals to focus on more complex tasks, right?
Exactly. It's about finding the right balance between human expertise and digital efficiency, and platforms are also expanding the scope of what they offer. They're adding specialist care, mental health services, creating a more holistic digital healthcare experience.
It's like building a whole virtual hospital, and the paper mentions some platforms are even expanding beyond traditional healthcare altogether.
That's right. Doctor.se, for example, licenses their technology to veterinary businesses. It's fascinating to see how this concept of platform grafting is applicable across different industries.
That really expands the possibilities. But all this integration and expansion, it must create some tension with existing players, right? Not everyone is going to welcome these new platforms with open arms.
You're absolutely right. The paper dives into this idea of transaction-free zones. Think of it like a traditional hospital where different departments seamlessly work together without needing invoices for every interaction.
Okay, I'm starting to see where this is going.
When a digital platform enters the picture, it can disrupt these informal networks and create new transaction points, potentially causing friction with established players.
It's like introducing a new currency into a well-functioning economy. It can cause some disruption as people adjust. So how do these platforms navigate these complexities? That brings us to actor integration, right?
Precisely. Actor integration is all about building relationships and collaborating with the key players in the existing ecosystem. This can be tricky because, as you said, not everyone is going to be thrilled about the arrival of a digital disruptor.
Especially if they see these platforms as competition.
Exactly. The paper highlights the challenge of partnering with established healthcare providers, like hospitals. They might worry that platforms are cherry-picking the easy cases, leaving them with the more complex and expensive ones.
So how do platforms overcome this resistance?
It takes a lot of communication transparency and demonstrating the value they bring to the table. Cry, for example, managed to attract both patients and doctors early on, which gave them a huge advantage. They solved the classic chicken or egg problem that many platforms face.
That makes sense. You need both sides of the marketplace to create a viable platform.
Exactly. And pharmacies have also become essential partners for many platforms. They're trusted by patients, they have a wide reach, and they're well positioned to handle things like prescription delivery. It's a natural fit.
These partnerships create a much smoother experience for patients, don't they? It's like a one-stop shop for all their healthcare needs.
Absolutely. And those partnerships can be incredibly powerful. Think about it. You consult with a doctor online, get a prescription, and have your medication delivered to your door all through a single platform. It's incredibly convenient and potentially locks patients into using that specific platform.
That's a really interesting point. These partnerships aren't just about convenience. They're also about building loyalty and market share.
You know, it's a very strategic move, and the paper also highlights how platforms learn and expand internationally by partnering. Cry, for instance, used their experience developing a COVID-19 platform to partner with other healthcare systems around the world.
Yeah, that's a great example of how grafting can foster global innovation.
Yeah.
It's not just about local disruption. It's about sharing knowledge and best practices across borders.
Exactly. And this brings us to the final and perhaps most challenging aspect of platform grafting ecosystem governance.
Okay, let's unpack that one. What makes it so challenging? Ecosystem governance. It sounds a bit intimidating. What does that actually mean when we're talking about platform grafting?
Well, think about it this way. Healthcare is heavily regulated for good reason, patient safety, privacy, all that stuff. But these regulations were often created before digital platforms even existed.
Right.
So platforms have this tricky balancing act. They need to comply with the existing rules while also advocating for changes that make it easier for them to integrate and innovate.
It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. The rules weren't designed with these new platforms in mind.
Exactly, and that creates all sorts of challenges. The paper highlights the issue of compensation models, for example. Traditional healthcare has its own ways of paying doctors and hospitals, and those models don't always translate neatly to the digital world.
So there's this tension between how traditional healthcare providers get reimbursed and how these new digital platforms want to be compensated.
That's right. There's a debate about whether platforms are being paid fairly compared to traditional providers, especially when they're delivering care more efficiently. In Sweden, for example, digital platforms initially received lower reimbursement rates, which made it harder for them to compete.
So the rules of the game can actually hinder innovation even when the platforms are providing a valuable service.
It can definitely create an uneven playing field. And then there's the issue of legitimacy. Platforms need to prove they're credible, trustworthy, and not cutting corners when it comes to patient safety. This is especially important when they're using AI to automate tasks.
Right. There's always some skepticism when technology starts taking on roles traditionally held by humans.
Absolutely. The paper gives the example of Platform 24's triage engine facing criticism because some people question whether an algorithm could make accurate assessments. They had to use data to demonstrate the effectiveness of their technology and build trust.
It's like needing to present your credentials, showing that you're qualified to be part of this complex system, and this challenge of legitimacy probably gets even harder when platforms try to scale across different regions or countries.
You're spot on. Regulations vary widely from place to place, creating a fragmented landscape for healthcare platforms. The paper quotes Krias Besudud, talking about the challenges of expanding internationally, and Babylon Health, another digital platform, also highlighted the need for more consistent regulatory frameworks.
So it's not just about navigating one set of rules, it's about potentially dealing with a whole patchwork of regulations.
Exactly. And that can be a major barrier to growth. In fact, the paper mentions that Dr.se, which we discussed earlier, actually shifted its strategy because of these fragmented regulations. Instead of directly providing healthcare services in new markets, they started licensing their technology to other businesses, which proved to be a more adaptable approach.
Wow, that's a really interesting adaptation. They basically said, if we can't play the game by these rules, we'll change the game.
It's a smart move. It shows how those dynamic capabilities, sensing, seizing, and transforming, are essential for navigating the complexities of ecosystem governance.
This whole conversation has been so insightful. So as we wrap up this final deep dive of the year, what's the big takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about as they head into the holidays?
I think the key takeaway is this platform grafting is a fundamentally different way of thinking about innovation. It's not about disruption. It's about integration and collaboration. It's about understanding that you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You can build on what's already there, working within existing systems to create something even better.
And it's a process that requires those dynamic capabilities.
Right.
The ability to sense opportunities, seize them strategically, and continuously transform both the platform and the ecosystem.
Exactly. Whether you're interested in healthcare technology or any industry that's being shaped by digital platforms, these principles of strategic integration are incredibly valuable.
So as you're enjoying your holiday feasts and opening presents, we encourage you to think about the industries you're passionate about. What examples of platform grafting do you see happening around you? What opportunities or challenges does this create? Share your thoughts with us on social media. We'd love to hear your perspectives.
And from both of us, happy holidays. We'll be back in the new year with more deep dives into the ideas that are shaping our world.